Welcome to the Whole Story podcast. This podcast series is focused on inspiring sustainability in agriculture, using the framework of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, also known as the SDGs. Each week, our guests are invited to share their story and leave us with some practical tips for sustainability on farms. I'm Becks Smith, founder of The Whole Story, a B Corp certified social enterprise inspiring, facilitating and articulating holistic sustainability in agriculture. And this podcast has been brought to life in partnership with the incredible team at FMG, who are passionate about partnering with organisations like The Whole Story, so together we can support rural New Zealand. So whatever you're doing while listening to this episode, thanks for choosing us. The best way you can support our mahi is to follow and share the show on whatever app you're listening on, and I hope this episode leaves you inspired and excited about the bigger picture of sustainability in agriculture. Today on the Whole Story podcast, I am joined by Myfanwy Alexander from Penmark Farms. Myfanwy is a contract milker with a passion for people and the crucial role that they play in sustainability. Based out of Duntroon, North Otago, she is originally from the UK, but has fallen in love with rural New Zealand and our way of farming. She is the provincial president for North Otago at Federated Farmers and a regional leader for Dairy Women's Network. A busy woman wearing many hats, but she still finds the time to talk to us during calving. So sit back and enjoy as she shares with us her thoughts on sustainability, some of the easy wins along the way, and some practical take-home tips. So welcome along today, everybody. Today we have with us Myfanwy Alexander. So thank you so much for joining us. And I wonder if you could start off this episode with telling us a little bit about yourself, your farming business, and where you're farming.
Thank you, Becks. So I am farming in North Otago and I contract milk around 1,000 cow farm. Numbers fluctuate a little bit. Here in the top of the Waitaki Valley, halfway between Duntroon and Curragh.
Awesome. And how many in the farming team?
So there's myself, plus I have 3 full-time staff members, and then 2 of the full-time staff members' wives also help out. So at the moment, because it's calving, we're all hands on deck. And my youngest daughter is also basically a full-time staff member.
Perfect. It's good to rope the kids in. I love that. I love that you've actually made the time to be on our podcast in the middle of calving. That's commitment. So thank you so much. How's it all going?
It's still in the early days, so it's good timing. But it's great. It's looking really positive. 3rd year here. So I'm really excited to start smashing some goals and targets. We've been getting better incrementally, but it's quite good fun to build on that.
Yeah, definitely. Although not great weather for it today. It's raining cats and dogs here.
Yep. Just kicking off here too and looking forward to that southerly. We managed to get quite a bit of snow last year, actually, which was interesting.
Always makes it a little bit more challenging. The first question really relates to the work that I do with The Whole Story. Sustainability. Such a big word, and it means so many different things to so many different people. What does it mean to you?
I guess when you approached me about this, I felt a little bit like, what can I offer? But I guess my pet hobby horse to go off on is the sustainability of our people. And at the end of the day, no other type of sustainability can be achieved without sustainable people systems. I find a lot in dairy that there's a lot of working very hard for a certain amount of time, burning yourself out, and then either people leaving the industry or just being quite disheartened and losing the passion and joy. So what I'd love to see is that our dairy sector just having a lot more people coming through, because they're building people coming behind them who are also thriving in their roles. And that way we can fix a lot of the issues in dairying that end up happening because people are so burnt out and unable to perform at their best. So I think if we look after our people, everything else will sort itself out, basically.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that concept of bringing up people behind you. I think I was actually speaking with someone this morning about that in the context of governance, but actually when you reach that hand up to the next rung on the ladder, that you reach your hand down behind you and pull someone up so that you keep that succession plan in place and make sure that you're looking after the people on the lower rungs.
I could not agree more. Like that, I think almost it's more important to bring the people coming up behind you. Behind you doesn't seem like the right term. People always say, oh, your staff members. I like to refer to them as a team. We are a team. It doesn't matter if you're the junior guy who's just arrived in the country. You're just as important. We can't do our day without you. And if you've got empowered team members in a sustainable, long-lasting system where they're going to be happy for a long time, it makes business sense. Aside from everything else.
That resonates so strongly with me. I just cannot think of myself as a tier above my team members, because actually they're the ones that keep the lights on. I've actually got the easy job. If you've got a good team in place, they're far more important than I am within my business. Yeah, making sure that we build really strong and healthy teams that are all valued is so crucial.
Yeah, absolutely, 100% behind that one. It's so much fun as well, watching people thrive. And one of the things I think is everyone should be happy at work. If you're happy, you're keen to come to work, you'll think of new and exciting ideas and ways to improve work for everyone. Yeah, I think just a happy team is the way forward for a sustainable team.
So then going into that a bit further, your journey to farming, so your journey to being in the position of having a team around you, could you touch on that and maybe tell us a little bit of a story there?
Yes, I've got a bit of a different story that got me into farming. I always joke that I'm the black sheep of my family. So, grew up in the UK, as you can probably tell from my accent, and hence the strange Welsh name. Born in Wales, and then we moved around the UK a lot as a child. Dad is an academic, moving around university towns. And I am the eldest of 7 girls. It's a big family. And then we moved back to Wales when I was starting high school. And that's where I first really got into farming. I was so lucky. They were the most amazing people locally who took me under their wing, this strange little 13-year-old kid who is begging to hang out with their lambs and help out in the lambing sheds and milking, and even happy to drive the scraper tractor on the dairy farm, cleaning out the old barns. Thanks to those people, my passion for agriculture just skyrocketed. So then I went to university at the Royal Agricultural University in Ciren, or the RAC as it used to be in my day. And while I was there, a chap came and we had to do a work experience, and he said, I can sort you out with 2 months of your placement in New Zealand calving cows. And I was like, okay, cool. Always like the All Blacks. Why not? Let's go to New Zealand. Headed over, did 2 months, and was like, oh, this country is amazing. Farming here is so much more exciting than in the UK. And in the UK, if you're not from a farming family, it is quite hard to get into farming. A careers teacher once told me many moons ago that if I was to be a farmer, I better marry one. We can imagine that was red rag to a bull. For me, I was like, stuff you. That is not how I'm going to do this. So anyway, came out here, did my work experience, went back, finished my degree, and then the moment my last paper was finished, I was straight on a flight out here to do calving in New Zealand. And that was 16 years ago now. And while I was here, I have had 2 girls, Emily, who is 13, and Belle, who is 12. Started out in the North Island, ended up with some difficulties with their girl's dad, and we moved south. He disappeared back up north again, and we were contract milking a farm. He disappeared at Christmas, and it was just a matter of keeping going. The girls and I kept the farm going with some extremely supportive farm owners. And then I wasn't happy to give up the day-to-day farming just because I was a mum on my own. Didn't mean that I had to give it up. So I was really lucky, got a co-managing job locally, and then worked my way back up the ladder to be contract milking again now.
What a cool story. I loved hearing that. There's so many different pathways into farming. I think it's that mindset piece, right? If there's a will, there's a way. I went down the marrying into it route.
No judgment, no judgment at all.
He got a win out of it too, right? As a farmer, marrying a vet was definitely a good move on his part.
I was going to say, I've got a couple of jobs I keep telling the girls. I could really do with a vet in the family, or maybe a helicopter pilot, just putting it out there.
Yeah, I'm hoping one of mine will become an engineer. That sounds useful.
Oh, yeah. I now have a partner who's not an engineer, but he's very good at engineering stuff. Yeah, he's on constant call. Yep.
You've got to pick carefully who you surround yourself with, right? It's all about filling.
I made much better choices. Yeah, second time round was much better.
Oh, that's awesome. No, I think it's just such good role modelling as well. I'm a mum of 3 daughters, and it's really good to see now so many more role models in our sector of pathways for women into agriculture that aren't just marrying the farmer. It's showing women how they can actually be a really key part of the succession plan on farms, or actually just go it alone and start from scratch and work their way up.
Yeah, I think that's so important to remember, is who's watching you at all the time. That's something that just plays in my mind. Like those girls are always watching you. My girls are always watching me. And you have those days where you come home and you're like, oh, I'm sorry, girls. I'm a terrible mum. I'm not like a real mum. I'm not here all the time. You get yourself off the bus and get your dinner. And they just turn around and they're like, Mum, you're just working. And I'm like, oh, but do you not mind? And they're like, no. Because then we get to do fun stuff. Like, it's all part of life. And sometimes I think we put too much pressure on ourselves, thinking that we have to meet some ideal, when actually, so long as we're showing them a good example in whatever field we're in and whatever we're doing, that's all that matters, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And it's such an important thing to remember. So I guess I love to put people in the hot seat. So I'd like to ask you what your funniest story is relating to farming or agriculture.
I actually found this one a difficult one to select. I've had so many daft things happen on farms over the years. One of the funniest or silliest moments is one employee and we spent maybe nearly an hour trying to fix a quad bike, only to realise that the kill switch was off the whole time. Yeah, yep. That was one of those ones where you're like, oh dear. And you had to laugh because there's nothing else you can do.
You've got to have good stories to tell for moments like this, right? So if we didn't have those, exactly, we wouldn't have the good stories that come out the back of it.
And there's always plenty of people getting a little bit of shit on their heads in the cowshed. That's always a favourite one. Christened, we call it.
Yeah. Back to the topic of sustainability then, and I think to give the listeners an idea of some of perhaps the low-hanging fruit or opportunities with regards to sustainability that you've come across either in your farming career or in the farm that you're on at the moment.
Yeah, I guess the low-hanging fruit, I would start with just you need to have an attitude when you're dealing with people, and to remember, it helps a lot if you've worked your way up through the industry, I think, because you can remember how you felt, what mattered to you, and you must get to know the staff members and really just try and find out what matters to them. So we've got one chap here who really loves to go home for 5 weeks between June and July. Is it really the easiest time of year for us to lose people when we're wintering crops? No. But does it make a huge difference to him? Of course. And it's not just about giving them things, but it's about just listening to what they might need and helping them out. But I think one of the most important things for staff and for anyone in a job is autonomy. And so if they feel that they have an autonomy over their day, or at least some kind of control and structure they can stick to. We have a big whiteboard in the shed, and especially at the main times of the year where we're not super busy, I'll have the whole week planned ahead. So everyone knows if they're getting a sleep in. If they've got something on that night, they can come to me and say, hey, look, Saturday night, we've got a big party. Awesome. You are not starting till lunchtime. That's easy for me to do. I've spent many years dragging my backside into milk cows at 4 a.m. when you're not feeling up to it. But, you can make a difference to their lives. And it's such small tweaks. I have snacks in the cowshed carving, which most people do anyway. But it's just remembering that these are people. They're not little robots. There's often a bit of a kind of mentality, and I've had it said to me many times, oh, just give everyone a bit of a rock up and yell at them, and then we'll all catch up at the end of the day for a beer. I'm just looking at them going, no, that is not the way to manage people sustainably. That's the way to drive everyone into an early grave. First of all, that beer after work mentality only works if you don't have children. And it very much doesn't work in a female perspective because you're usually the one having to go home to sort the children. And then, of course, we've got husband and wife couples. One of them needs to stay home in the morning. Don't have them both starting early in the morning. One starts early, one starts late. Someone puts the kid on the bus in the morning and someone's finished in time to pick the kid up off the bus. Small things like that, and people just so appreciate it. And then you can build a really supportive team from there.
Yeah, it makes such a difference, doesn't it? And as you say, it's not always financial things, and it's not always handouts, but it's actually just finding out what's important to people and understanding what drives them, what they value, and actually how their lives work, how they tick, because the more that we can make work fit around people's lives, the more happy and healthy and sustainable our teams are.
I couldn't agree more. And something that I found hard to battle with coming from the North Island, where it was more like you were a couple usually running a farm and you just worked flat out, is learning to do that balance between how long you work and how much time off you give people and yourself. I'm the worst. I need to practice what I preach a bit more, but taking a step back and letting other people get on and do the job and empowering them to do the job so that you can rest, so that your work is sustainable in itself and that your employment itself is sustainable. And that's always a tricky one.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I'm not good at juggling that either. Perhaps some work-ons for us.
Definitely.
And there your whiteboard, and I have seen on your Instagram your whiteboard, and it is outstanding. I tell you what, I've got whiteboard envy. I noticed you even put up the kids' sport, your sport, everything goes on there, so people have got full transparency over what's going on in the week. And I think it's nice as well as an employer to be able to give your team an insight into what's going on for you as well. So that then gives them, as you say, the autonomy to actually care about you a little bit and understand where you're coming from and what you might be rushing to get off to, or what you might have experienced the day before and why you might be a little stiff and sore perhaps the next day, or just not in the right headspace. It's just so nice to be able to humanise the work experience.
I couldn't agree more, because sometimes you see, the contract worker's just driving around in his ute or her, they're not down doing the work with us. And so there's a reason why they're doing that. So if you communicate that with your staff, then they know what's going on. And then they'll be like, oh, that makes sense. We'll carry on. But if you keep too much of a distance, I know you don't want to be in each other's pockets completely, but if you keep that connection and I don't know how to word this correctly, but there's a kind of an openness. There's no kind of secrets. Everybody knows what everyone's up against or / dealing with. Then we can all work together. I mean, yesterday was my daughter's last cross country for Duntroon school. It's up in Merrimer. I really wanted to go on up and watch her race. It's the last child at the local primary school. And one of my workers, his daughter was also racing. So the two of us got up really early, got a whole load of jobs done. The rest of the team then came in, were like, off you go, guys, and took over. Things like that just make such a difference in life.
Cool to have such a supportive team around you and allowing that support in. I think for so long we became such machines in the work environment and that there had to be a hierarchy. And I think, yes, there's still a place for the hierarchy, but also there's a real space for that supportive unit and bringing that into the workplace.
And that's one of the lowest hung fruits, is to support each other and to say thank you, to appreciate your staff. It boggles my mind. I know it's a generational thing, and I know us millennials grew up receiving an award for everything. So maybe it's just a millennial in me who likes to have a thank you or say a thank you. But people light up when you say thank you and you value them and you appreciate them. That's free. That's absolutely free. And then suddenly you've got a team who want to stay with you no matter what. Even if you're having a bad year and financially you can't buy the best bikes or things are a bit tough, or you're having a bad year weather-wise, they'll keep going for you, whereas others would just jump ship.
Yeah, the small thanks goes a long way, right? You spoke there before about being, is it third season in now, and some exciting goals and KPIs on the charts. What is exciting you most about your farming business over the next 5 years, say?
This farm's really fun because we have a whole range of breeds of cows. So it's been great fun just seeing how they're going. It's not just, we've got Kiwi Cross, we've got Friesians, but we've also got things like milking shorthorns. The farm owners bought a few brown Swiss this year, heifers, so they'll be coming through. Montbéliards, Fleckvies, Normandies are coming through, and just seeing how those girls who are now R3s, so coming up into their second lactation, how they're looking. And that's all the excitement currently, and it's fun seeing the babies popping out that we planned for. We've got some targets around reproduction, hence bringing the different breeds in, just trying to play around. It's quite a steep farm. There's a few challenges here. In terms of us personally, I think we'd like to get a bit of equity behind us. Farm ownership would be amazing. I always joke that if I won the lottery, I would set up a farm to prove that you can be nice to your staff and they'll stay around and you can actually smash every target out there industry standards wise just by being nice to people. But it makes me sound very woo. But yeah, just working away at improving what we've already got, but also trying to make sure there's room for our staff to develop and grow, because otherwise they will need to move on and I really don't want them to leave.
No, that's so nice. And I don't think woo-woo at all. I think it's intelligent business to want to look after your staff so that they want to stay and so that you can smash industry targets. So it's actually a business strategy.
I'll let you know if I get it up and running. Something else which is not really farm related, but industry-wide and a little bit through my role with Feds, is I'd love to see a better measure of good employers. In dairy at the moment, with our Fonterra assessments, we have to do the Workplace 360. I hate to not seem positive about that system, but it's a joke. You just click a box and say, yep, I'm great. Yep, I'm great. And the farm assessor comes in and goes, oh, cool, you're great. And to me, that's just madness. No one's spoken to my staff. I could be a horrible boss. Like, you actually don't know that I do all these things. I have a health and safety record and all that stuff. That's the real basics, though. So if there was some way we could, I don't know, celebrate our amazing farm owners, contract milkers. And I think going forward, we're going to have a big issue in the industry because I think linked to COVID a little bit and linked to the lack of people coming into the country, we've actually got a real shortage coming up of the farm manager, contract milker, share milker type people ready to go into those roles. And if we're not careful, the ones we do have will end up burnt out and leaving, and we'll end up with a real shortage. And so that's something we're going to have to look at industry-wide and ways to support both farm owners who may have got a farm but may not have any qualifications in people management, but actually do care about their people on the farm and want to do a good job. So something around the education of that is going to be critical going forward.
Yeah, I think so. And it's such an important piece is actually how you do measure that, how you measure someone's capacity and performance as an employer, because I would agree, like looking at that with the whole stories work, it's actually one of those, a lot of those softer measures are really hard to be able to quantify. And it's something we need to, because definitely, in my opinion, and yours obviously as well, it's a huge part of our sustainability story. And I think that how we actually quantify it rather than self-validating and saying, yeah, I'm great at staff management, becomes part of the social licensing is actually how we prove what we're doing in a way that resonates with people. And we're going to have a labour shortage and they're going to have the pick of jobs. So you can see that as a farm owner as an opportunity on your side as well, is actually they're going to look for jobs with people who've got a proven track record of being a good employer. How do you stand out from the crowd? How do you lead in that space to attract good staff and good teams onto your farm? Because nobody wants to be at the other end of the scale and owning the farm, but not having the staff to run it and not necessarily having the skills or expertise yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. You've hit the nail on the head there. And it costs money. It costs a lot of money to have turnover of staff. It costs a lot of money to have poor performing staff. So if we can work out a way to educate everyone in what good looks like and what the simple things are that can produce a really sustainable team going forward, I think we could be onto something there.
So you touched on there a wee bit about your Feds role. Do you want to just elaborate on that and let our listeners know what your role within Feds is?
Yeah, so I recently became the provincial president here in North Otago for Federated Farmers. I was the dairy chair before that and dairy and share milker chairs. I'd also do some work with the regional leader for Dairy Women's Network. As I alluded to before, I came into a community at a pretty tricky time in my life. I was rearing two young children, a 3 and a 4-year-old at the time, in an area I didn't know anyone. I just moved to. My whole family is still over in the UK. And I was welcomed in a way I cannot explain. The most supportive people in this area. Duntroon has a special place in my heart forever. So I feel that this is my way of giving back. I really want this community to still be here for when Belle, my youngest, is farming, and Emily, she still wants to live rural, even though she's completely not interested in farming. I may have put her off. But I want this here for them and their children's children. I think a lot of the time we fail to look at the benefits small communities bring that are unquantifiable in a financial sense. The fact that we have a food fairies texting system going out so that when a baby is born, anyone who's able to chucks a load of baking together and that gets delivered. You wouldn't have that system in many urban areas. My sister lives in London, and when it was COVID, she actually met her neighbour for the first time. She'd already lived in that house for a year. That's crazy. Next door neighbour, they share a wall. Whereas we have such amazing communities here, and I just hope through my role with Feds and through my Dairy Women's Network work that hopefully we can bring some sense of connection and people feel how special that is. I believe that agriculture in New Zealand is world leading and so special that we need to preserve it, but we do need to move forward because standing still and giving ourselves a pat on the back is not the way forward. So yeah, that's what got me into Feds.
That's so cool. I come from an urban background, and so I feel the same. Coming into a rural community, there's so much that you just can't even explain about how supportive people are and just what that value is of having that community around you. You know, I was actually speaking to some farmers the other day and going, as farming businesses, the way that you contribute to your communities through voluntary roles or even paid roles, but actually the level of involvement within a community is just not seen in any other industry. And how you quantify that, it's just something really unique about New Zealand's rural communities. I think that we should, if we could bottle it, we'd all be millionaires.
It would be fantastic, wouldn't it? And then that's the thing I think we need to remember is when we are talking about the environmental impact of farming, we have to be really careful that the methods that we use to go forward to reach our goals do not end up destroying our rural communities. Because when you look at the wee school like Duntroon, yes, there's been a big dairy boom in our area, but that's brought a lot of families in. Without that big dairy boom, that school would have a very low role. One farm can support multiple families, and it's just something we have to watch going forward, that we're really careful not to lose that heart of our communities.
Yeah, 100%. So what has been some of the best farming advice you've ever received?
This is a bit of a sideways one. So I got told years ago, don't rely on anyone to help you out. Everyone's in for it for themselves. Now, that sounds horrendously negative, and it is. Realistically, it is true. But it also fueled my fire to be like, no, not everyone is like that. That's not true. I think we can be in it for ourselves, so to speak, as in we want to further our career, set ourselves up for retirement, make sure our children are well educated and provided for. But we can also make sure others around us are afforded the same. We don't need to step all over other people in order to get ahead. We can do it with supporting each other. Of course, it is on you. And I've felt that over the years, just me rearing the kids and having to take jobs that maybe didn't at times pay as much as I needed to get ahead. But it's all about the end goal, isn't it? You just keep going and keep your end targets in mind. And yeah, you'll get there. And there are wonderful people around who will support you. So that's a bit of a sideways best advice I ever had, but it always stuck with me.
Yeah, I really like that. It's actually made me reflect a little bit about how there's no one coming to save you. You have to rely on yourself at the end of the day, right? So you have to just put one foot in front of the other. But I think in doing that, you can either stand on other people, or you can make sure that the road is easier for the people coming along with you. And I think that's what you're summing up there, is it's actually to do it and have the experience benefit other people as opposed to having the experience take away from other people.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually just thinking then, I woke up this morning to a text message from one of my team members, and it was like, oh, my wife has got residency. She's coming over. Thank you so much. Thank you for all you did. And I was like, I've done nothing. I hate this stuff. I feel so awkward. I'm like, oh, don't be silly. You're here to help me. It's fine. Don't worry. But that didn't cost me anything. I didn't pay for her visa. I just wrote a couple of letters and just made sure he had a job and a house. And I think sometimes we think that we have to do big, grand things to really make an impact in people's lives. But if you can just do the little things and then the big things will follow along,
Yeah. And we learn so much along the way in our own hardships that can really benefit others, that just being able to pass on that learning or that knowledge to someone else. As you say, it doesn't take anything. It's just, I found this bit hard. This is what I found that made it easier, and I'd love to help. And it doesn't feel like you're going out of your way. It's just maybe something that completely like that experience sucked for me, and I don't want to see anybody else go through that. So if it's a conversation, or as you say, a letter, or just helping someone navigate a certain situation, then I'm with you on that one.
It's so easy to do. Why wouldn't you? You know, you can just make such a difference. Yeah. I think if people focused more on the people in their businesses, they'd find results would come a lot quicker.
As you said right at the start of our conversation, they're at the heart of it. And so if you ensure that the people side of things looked after, it's actually all of these measures are interconnected, and you'll be surprised at what other targets just coincidentally get met along the way because you've looked after people.
And I'd just like to say, I don't have all the answers, by the way, at all. I look at the amazing work that people like Align Farms are doing on a big corporate level, where they've put in a community garden for veggies. And I just think, oh my goodness, how amazing would that be to have a farm with our own veggie garden? We've got veggie gardens at the two houses and we share eggs and things like that. But how amazing would it be to do those great big things? But sometimes just remember that the little things do have an impact too, and you can actually do a lot no matter what level you are. It was one of the key drivers of why I wanted to become self-employed. I was sick of things outside my control impacting on the staff that I would work with, and then they'd leave. And I was just over it. I was just like, I want to have a good team that lasts, and it's a good sustainable system. So yeah, hopefully I'm getting there.
Sounds like it to me. And so probably touching on one of the really tricky topics in our sector at the moment is this fast pace of change and the unrelenting avalanche that seems to be coming at us all. I'm really interested how you yourself prevent overwhelm, burnout, apathy, and just continue to stand up and face that challenge.
Okay, so a previous boss of mine, a farm owner of mine, once described me as relentlessly positive. And I was like, well, I don't know how to take that, but seeing as I'm relentlessly positive, I'll take that as a positive. So I actually think it's exciting. I think there's loads of exciting stuff coming at us. Yes, there's a lot of silly, bogged down, paperwork, boring stuff coming at us. But if we look at the overview of what's coming at us in the next 10 to 15 years, we have to make some big changes. We do. But isn't that exciting? We aren't farming the same way as we farmed 15 years ago. When I first came here, so many things. I wouldn't be thinking about a collar on a cow that was telling me all this information. I don't know. I think, yes, it can get a bit tiring. Yes, you can get burnt out by it, but it's all about attitude. And if you don't go in with the attitude that you're being forced to do these things, and you look at ways to be proactive, getting ahead of the curve, then when the things come at you, you're like, oh, we're prepared. And you won't get it right all of the time, and we won't. And we'll have to change things, but that's what we've done all the way through human history. So I guess if we just keep positive, look for the exciting opportunities. We're going to start trading with some totally different countries soon. China's not sustainable. We can't keep going down this same line. Who's next? Let's go out and see what's going on next. The same way as we had to change in the 80s from trading purely with Britain and Europe and trying some new ideas. So we'll get new trading partners. We'll have to look at new systems. We need to look at the food security of New Zealand. I think COVID was a huge highlight that our supply chains are not as secure as we think they are. We're an island. We're not important on the grand scale of things. If you've got a ship full of product to sell, why would you keep going all the way to New Zealand and not just drop it off in Singapore or Australia and go and get another load in the same time? We need to be a little bit more self-sufficient, a little bit more aware and ready for what's coming next. But I think it's pretty exciting, to be honest. There's going to be some amazing developments in technology. Just, yeah, it's going to be brilliant.
I love that relentless positivity. I think many would probably describe me the same. I just see so much opportunity in what we've got coming at us. Speaking to someone the other day about this around uncertainty, and there is a lot of uncertainty at the moment, but I think we're farmers. We choose to operate businesses in the most uncertain of environments. between market prices and the weather and working with, they say don't work with animals or children, and we're generally working most
with
of us.
both.
We are genuinely working in one of the most uncertain. I think sometimes recognising that and actually pulling that out as one of our strengths. We're actually really good at dealing with uncertainty. It's what we choose to do, and we do it really well. Maybe taking a step back and reframing that and going, yes, it's uncertain, but we're good at uncertain.
I love that way of looking at it, obviously, because it's relentlessly positive. Yes, exactly. We are experts at it. We are so good at dealing with the uncertainties. In New Zealand, we've got great support for our farmers. I'll bang the old feds drum again. We've got people lobbying for us. We've got people sorting that side of things out. We've got people attending constant ECAN and ORC meetings that may not always be the most fun, but at least we're getting our points of view out there. And so long as we are sensible and open to change, I think it's going to be a pretty exciting few years ahead.
Count me in anyway. As we like to with this podcast, leave people back down at the ground level with something to take away with them. So I'd love to hear from you what your take-home sustainability tip is for other farming businesses listening.
I guess because I've talked all about the people side of things, I'd just say, just put yourself in the boots of the person you're talking to. I say this with the kids as well. Just remember when you were that age, what was it that was really bugging you? What really bugged you when you were a farm assistant? What really made the difference? Was it that the very busy farm manager or farm owner came down and helped you weed that flax planting area? Did they give you a hand for 10 minutes and they chatted to you and they asked about your family and made the effort to remember your birthday, give you your birthday off, or whatever it was? Remember that Saturday night party you have. Those really small, free, insignificant, really on the grand scale of it, things that make the huge impacts. That's where I think the big difference can be made.
Yeah, and such an easily implementable, practical take-home tip. So thank you so much for that. Hey, this has been the most wonderful chat, and I just want to take the time to thank you so much for your time. I know it's super busy on farm, and yeah, I really appreciate you taking the time and also having the courage to speak to me today. I know you weren't entirely comfortable when I first reached out, but you have been the most outstanding guest, and I know that our listeners will thoroughly enjoy this conversation. So thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Becks. Well, you've helped me avoid a bit of the rain, so thank you very much, and I'll drag myself back out there now.
Wow, what an incredible story. Myfanwy is a superstar, and I am so glad that she decided to come back to New Zealand and stick around here contributing to our primary sector. I'm also super stoked that she joined me during calving. What a commitment. So let's dig a little bit deeper into how some of the Sustainable Development Goals integrate within Myfanwy's farming business. I've picked the top 5 from our conversation. So firstly, goal number 8, decent work and economic growth, shines through really strongly in Myfanwy's farming business. She is passionate about being a good employer, but also as a contract milker, she has to look after her own equity and economic growth. Goal number 3, good health and well-being, with her passion for looking after her workers' mental health and well-being and their work-life balance. Goal number 5, gender equality, is informed by her own experiences as a solo mum with 2 young kids on farm. She's conscious of the juggle that some mums encounter while working and also being the primary caregiver. Goal number 11, sustainable communities, is really important to Myfanwy. She mentions how much she values her local community, the support that Duntroon gave her, but also the wider community of the primary sector industry. And lastly, goal number 16, peace, justice and strong institutions. This shines through really strongly with her contribution in her Feds role, but also in her role with Dairy Women's Network. Myfanwy is passionate about giving back to the primary sector and ensuring that our people are looked after within it.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Whole Story podcast. We really hope you enjoyed it and are feeling inspired and optimistic about putting sustainability into practice on farm. I have one last request for you before you go. Make sure, whatever platform you're listening to us on, that you hit follow and share the show or episodes with your friends, so that together we can grow our community and inspire sustainability in agriculture in Aotearoa, New Zealand. And thanks again to FMG for partnering with The Whole Story, so that we could bring this podcast to life for you all to enjoy. Catch you next time.